Startup visas, despite their attractiveness and the rising popularity, have specific and fundamental flaws. And today in this video, I am going to highlight some of these. So let's get into it. Hello everybody, I hope you're doing well. Today I want to talk about startup visas around the world and some of the common issues and flaws, which I would say these are structural flaws within these startup visa systems around the world. And I will highlight these in a specific order, but I have to say I'm not focusing on one specific country. Rather, I'm taking a global outlook into this. The point of the video is to make entrepreneurs aware of what these challenges and shortcomings are with startup visas. Unfortunately, a lot of firms and law firms, agents, etc., whatever they are, when they're trying to advocate for these startup visas, what they do is they only highlight the benefits of these visas, but they don't actually refer to the problems. So my goal in this video is to give you a comprehensive overview and of the flaws involved in these visas so that you can make a more perhaps calculated choice when you're seeking to choose a country to relocate to on a business basis. Okay, so the first problem that I want to get into is the lack of flexibility that exists in these visas. Now, what do I mean by lack of flexibility? What I mean is there are specific requirements that are in place for entrepreneurs, especially when it comes to applying for further visa extensions. Now, this reminds me of something that a former friend of mine told me before. And what actually this friend told me is that entrepreneurship and immigration are just principally incompatible with each other. And really the core point here is that flexibility. And I would say, as someone who has been an entrepreneur myself, what I've learned is that flexibility should be pretty much the core principle of entrepreneurship. You need to be flexible and adaptable to change. That's just the nature of entrepreneurship. And unfortunately, when you combine this with immigration requirements and specific milestones being put in place, it just becomes rather incompatible. And pretty much this leads to my second point, which is risk imbalance. So, what do I mean by risk imbalance? What I mean is, when an entrepreneur decides to move to another country, they are investing two critical assets, which is time and money. So they're pretty much investing all of these into their new venture in that new country. Now, there are certain factors which is beyond that entrepreneur's control. Let's say a global pandemic, as we saw 5 years ago. These things could literally pretty much force that founder to shut their business down. Now, if they do that, and they've already put years and money into that venture in this new country, the last thing they need is the inability to further remain in that new destination. Because a lot of people, when they want to move their business abroad, they're also trying to establish a new home in that country. So in reality, what we will have is pretty much the founder has put their money, they've put their time into that new venture, and the host country will benefit from those investments. But the founder is pretty much putting everything at risk. And as I said, there's always a risk of failure with a business, or a business not meeting the projected milestones. So this lack of balance in terms of risk is a key issue, and something that policymakers ought to really consider. Another issue that I would say exists is short timeframes in these startup visas. Now, we have cases like the Netherlands, and I've done previous videos on the Netherlands. There are certain things that I really like about that startup visa regime that they have. For example, very clear and they have an extensive definition of what constitutes innovation. And that's actually my next point. But anyways, I would say the short time frames of 12 to 24 months with these visas, they can prove to be not feasible for a lot of entrepreneurs because 12 months, for many founders, this period could just be dedicated to research and identifying the new market in the new host country. So then expecting these entrepreneurs to go and extend the visa or switch to another visa category, it's just simply not feasible, and it just creates an unnecessary level of stress and anxiety and barrier for entrepreneurs. So that's another problem. Lastly, and most importantly, is that many, if not all, of these startup visas have an emphasis on innovation. So they want to attract high potential ventures into their country. And theoretically, this is correct because a policymaker ought to consider the impact that foreign entrepreneurs will make through their venture. And obviously, innovation would be a paramount factor with that. However, in practice, what we will have is that innovation can be very subjective and it can be open to interpretation very well. So the result is that innovation can be defined in strict arbitrary terms. And this is not very useful because clarity is essential for every entrepreneur. This is an issue with the UK's Innovator Founder Visa, for example. And I've made videos on this before, is that I believe it is very vague as to what constitutes innovation. Now, the guidelines say, for example, that it should not be easily replicated. But then again, this is very subjective as well, because for instance, one factor that could define the ease or the difficulty of replicability is intellectual property / patents. But we know that majority of concepts, even though they may have very high potential, they may not qualify for patents. So it could be defined in other terms. For example, specific partnerships or a founder's network. I believe those can be very crucial in establishing innovation. And this is something that the guidelines in the UK's Innovator Founder Visa regime doesn't actually take into account. On the other hand, we have the Netherlands, which has a far more defined criteria as to what they constitute innovative. Another one, I would say this kind of falls under innovation, but also falls under the high potential interpretation, is Singapore's Entree Pass. And this one, even though it has very, very strict requirements, but the requirements are very clear, okay? They're very clear and transparent. For example, venture capital funding or intellectual property registration. So as I said, patents that can be defensible. So that innovation element is a key flaw with a lot of these startup visas because, again, it's subjective and pretty much open to interpretation. Therefore, it creates a lack of clarity. So there is that. Well, as I said, I wanted to keep this video rather brief, but I hope this video kind of helps you to understand the full picture of startup visas around the world. I help clients with their global business mobility options, and I focus on several countries, both across Europe and Asia. So if you believe that you could use my help with your global business mobility options, feel free to get in touch with me and I'll see if I can help. Thanks for watching.